Szanowni Państwo, witam.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our press conference. At the beginning, some housekeeping info. The conference will be held in Polish and in English. Those of you who are with us in person can benefit from simultaneous interpretation into Polish on channel 1 and into English on channel 2. If you're watching us online, you can find the language version which suits you, Polish or English, on our YouTube channel of Caritas Poland.
Press 2 for English, and also for those who are watching us online, you may find an English version on our YouTube channel of Caritas Poland. Bardzo serdecznie witam Państwa na konferencji prasowej, która jest wyjątkowa.
This is a very special press conference because of the partners meeting we are having for the first time, where we have guests from over 25 countries to talk about this very important issue helping Ukraine is. I'm very happy to welcome our guests here. Maria Neumann, Secretary General of Caritas Europe, Silvia Simbaldi, the Director for Humanitarian Aid at Caritas Europe, Tetiana Stawniczy, President of Caritas Ukraine, Father Wieczesław Griniewicz, Director of Caritas Spes in Ukraine, and Reverend Marcin Niżycki, Director of Caritas Poland. Welcome everybody, and now over to the video clip, because this is what we are going to show you at the beginning of our conference.
Podsumowanie działań Caritas na rzecz Ukrainy. W pierwszych tygodniach wojny otworzyliśmy w pasie przygranicznym namioty nadziei. Nasi wolontariusze dyżurowali w dzień i w nocy, m.in. w Krościenku, Korczowej, Zosinie czy na dworcu PKP w Przemyślu. Do wszystkich punktów recepcyjnych we współpracy ze służbami granicznymi dostarczyliśmy żywność, termosy, koce. W samym tylko Przemyślu dziennie rozdawano około 30 000 kanapek i kilka tysięcy litrów zupy. Do dziś prowadzimy w Przemyślu pokój dla matki z dzieckiem. Przez pewien czas taki pokój funkcjonował także w Warszawie. Na Ukrainę przekazaliśmy dary rzeczowe, których szacunkowa wartość przekroczyła 140 milionów złotych. Wśród artykułów znalazła się m.in. żywność, środki higieniczne, zaopatrzenie medyczne, leki, wózki inwalidzkie czy generatory prądu. Do tej pory udało się przekazać około 20 000 ton różnego rodzaju darów. Gdybyśmy chcieli je teraz przetransportować, potrzebowalibyśmy około 1000 tirów. Ulepszamy logistykę, by skutecznie wspierać mieszkańców Ukrainy. Współpracujemy przy tym z partnerami zrzeszonymi w międzynarodowej sieci Konfederacji Caritas Internationalis, przede wszystkim z 2 Caritas na Ukrainie, czyli Caritas Spes i Caritas Ukraina, a także z amerykańską Catholic Relief Services, Caritas Switzerland czy Caritas Deutschland. Uruchomiliśmy 2 centra logistyczne na terenie Caritas Archidiecezji Przemyskiej oraz Lubelskiej. Poprawiamy płynność i szybkość transportów humanitarnych. W efekcie wspólnych działań powstał transgraniczny hub o powierzchni ponad 3000 m2 z magazynem zarządzanym przez pracowników Caritas Archidiecezji Lubelskiej. Uruchomiliśmy program Paczka dla Ukrainy, dzięki któremu każdy może wspierać mieszkańców Ukrainy wysyłając dary rzeczowe. Do tej pory do najbardziej potrzebujących trafiło 38 000 paczek. Paczka ma określony wymiar i masę, a dokładną listę produktów, które powinny się w niej znaleźć, zamieściliśmy na stronie caritas.pl/paczka dla Ukrainy. Wartość jednej paczki to około 300-400 zł, co oznacza, że dotychczasową pomoc od polskich darczyńców w ramach tej akcji można oszacować na kwotę około 13 milionów złotych. Dalsza pomoc w Polsce. Jednym z pierwszych i najpilniejszych naszych działań na rzecz uchodźców była pomoc żywnościowa. W czasie szczególnego natężenia ruchu na granicy polsko-ukraińskiej wydaliśmy ponad 1,5 miliona posiłków. Około 2500 dzieci ukraińskich objęliśmy opieką i wsparciem edukacyjnym. Placówki Caritas przyjęły 700 dzieci z domów dziecka wraz z ich opiekunami oraz pomogliśmy w relokacji dzieci potrzebujących specjalistycznej pomocy do odpowiednich ośrodków za granicą. Zapewniamy porady psychologiczne i wsparcie prawne. Do tej pory z pomocy psychologicznej skorzystało blisko 5000 osób, a z pomocy prawnej 2000. Pomoc uchodźcom świadczyło około 20 000 wolontariuszy Caritas, w tym około 1500 przy granicy polsko-ukraińskiej. Ponad 400 000 uchodźców z Ukrainy skorzystało z pomocy socjalno-informacyjnej oferowanej przez Caritas, w tym osoby niepełnosprawne, seniorzy, rodziny i dzieci. 24 kwietnia w całej Polsce odbył się Dzień Dobra. Planowane od ponad roku święto Caritas i związanych z organizacją wolontariuszy stało się okazją do integracji polsko-ukraińskiej. Telewizja Polska transmitowała na żywo finałowy koncert charytatywny. Tego samego dnia nasi przyjaciele z kościołów wschodnich obchodzili Wielkanoc. Dla nich Caritas diecezjalne we współpracy z Polskim Holdingiem Hotelowym i innymi partnerami zorganizowały śniadania wielkanocne, w których udział wzięło około 20 000 osób. Uruchomiliśmy 30 centrów pomocy migrantom i uchodźcom na terenie Polski, w których można uzyskać wsparcie psychologiczne, prawne, pośrednictwo pracy, opiekę nad dziećmi oraz szereg kursów, w tym językowych czy związanych z odnalezieniem się na rynku pracy. Jedno z najnowszych centrów pomocy migrantom i uchodźcom działa w Warszawie przy ulicy Towarowej 25A. Niezwykła jest nasza gościnność. Tysiące rodzin, parafii, zakonów, stowarzyszeń i ośrodków Caritas gościło i ciągle gości uchodźców. Nie zapominamy o pomocy finansowej dla uchodźców. Blisko 2700 kart przedpłaconych, honorowanych w sklepach spożywczych, o łącznej wartości prawie 2,5 miliona złotych. 20 600 e-kodów na zakup żywności w sieci sklepów Biedronka, o łącznej wartości 1 348 000 złotych. 3000 kart Sodexo do bankomatów o łącznej wartości 3 840 000 złotych. W najbliższym czasie planujemy zrealizować kolejne działania pomocowe zakrojone na dużą skalę. Po pierwsze, chcemy rozszerzyć program Rodzina Rodzinie na rodziny, które pozostały na Ukrainie. Wartość początkowa przedsięwzięcia wynosi 1 000 000 euro. Po drugie, chcemy przekazać 1 000 000 euro na pomoc psychologiczną dla osób z Ukrainy, mierzących się z traumą związaną z wojną. Chcemy w tym roku zapewnić dzieciom z Ukrainy letni wypoczynek, który pozwoli im odzyskać radość i stanie się okazją do integracji. W ramach wakacyjnej akcji Caritas z kolonii skorzysta 1635 dzieci ukraińskich przebywających w Polsce. Dziękujemy wszystkim, którzy wsparli działania Caritas. Dziękujemy również partnerom, sponsorom, darczyńcom i wszystkim ludziom dobrej woli.
Materiał
You can find this video, this material, and the press kit we are going to distribute after the conference. And now over to Reverend Marcin Niżycki, Director of Caritas Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, for the last 3 days we've been talking about the broad area of charity, crisis management and collaboration, which is indispensable if we have such scale of events happening. The time has come to recapitulate on what's been going on at the partners meeting organized by the Caritas Europe and at the Charity Forum. Over 3 days, we heard from 50 delegates, part of Caritas Europe Network and Caritas Internationale Confederation from 25 countries, supporting humanitarian aid in Ukraine and action for Ukrainian refugees in Poland. On the first day of the partners meeting, we learned about the help rendered by Ukrainian organizations. This will be covered in a minute by directors of Caritas Ukraine. I can only say that we are really admiring the dedication of humanitarian aid workers on site despite very hard conditions. One of the most important topics were humanitarian appeals. What are these? In a country in crisis, Caritas can instigate such an appeal in order to raise aid resources and help in kind. This is a tried and tested way to raise support for countries and military conflicts and or economic straits, natural catastrophes, or facing waves of refugees. Thanks to this, we act based on local structures, which is key for smart aid. The first appeal, lasting over 2 months, amounted to 5.3 million PLN, which is 1.2 million euros. The funds raised were allocated on helping families and on developing the cross-border hub for humanitarian aid and communication with Caritas Spes and Caritas Ukraine. The second appeal we announced on Tuesday, right after the Charity Forum meeting. In this, we plan to raise 15 million euros, which is about 70 million PLN. The support will be realized through our migrant and refugee centers all across Poland. We already have 32 such centers. Nearly all of them were developed immediately as a response to the war. The resources raised will be allocated on one-off money support for families and for safe shelters, for psychological and legal aid, for supporting the labor market orientation, learning Polish, and teaching Polish, and organizing childcare. In the appeal, we also covered humanitarian aid for Ukraine, as it has been realized so far with our partners at Caritas Network. It will allow for continuation and broadening the aid so far. The challenges related to supporting Ukrainian refugees were the main topic of the second day, which was the Charity Forum. It involved NGOs, partners from NGOs and the business community. The presenters drew our attention to the difficulties and aspects of integration with the Polish society and the various sectoral aspects of aiding refugees. In the panel, we had the Secretary General of Caritas Europe, directors of Caritas Space, and the director of Caritas Ukraine. The topics included food crisis and the aftermath of breaking supply chains affecting the international community. The conclusions pertain to the necessity to strengthen international collaboration, including seeking new food distribution channel in the wake of perils related to war, in particular the block of Black Sea ports. It's been nearly 4 months since the outbreak of war. We are very much aware that helping Ukraine has to become a long-term exercise. That is why we plan to start the cash assistance program in Ukraine, mirroring what we have in Middle East and Caritas, family to family, with the basic value of 1 million euro, and the psychological aid program, the value amounting to 1 million euro too. Moreover, we are including Ukrainian refugees to aid programs in Poland. A good example is the summer holiday campaign of Caritas, consisting in organizing summer holidays for about 2,000 of Ukrainian children. The war in Ukraine is no longer merely regional. Its political, social, and economic aftermath is already now felt all over the world. This goes to show that it is indispensable to further strengthen our international collaboration. I'd like to thank all the speakers coming to our 3-day partners meeting and the Charity Forum. I do believe that our dialogue will make our aid more efficient, efficacious, and smarter, and that will be able to anticipate the oncoming humanitarian crisis with our aid. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now over to Maria Newman, Secretary General of Caritas Europe.
Thank you very much and good morning. Since the war started in Ukraine on the 24th of February, the Caritas network across Europe and indeed across the world has been working tirelessly to support the people affected, the communities, to face the results and the consequences of the war, the devastating and many consequences. So I'm speaking about support of Caritas in Ukraine, and we will hear a little bit about that later, but also support from Caritas in the neighboring countries. We were seeing on the video what Caritas Poland has been doing. Impressive amazing work, and similarly, the other Caritases in the neighboring countries have been supporting from day one. There are around 7 million people that have left Ukraine due to this war. There are around 8 million people internally displaced in Ukraine. That means about 1 in 3 Ukrainians that had to leave their homes, being forcibly leaving their homes since the beginning of the war. And I think as Caritas Europa, our role has really been to try to keep the network together in this, to stay together, to coordinate in the best way, to support the people affected. And I have to say that the support and the solidarity that we have seen has been absolutely unprecedented. And we are trying to ensure that we can channel that support in the best possible way, sharing and coordinating within Europe, but also globally. The Caritas family is present in some 162 countries across the world. And in Europe, there are 46 countries with national Caritases, and I can say that every single one of them has been trying to support as they can. The highest number of refugees have been arriving to Poland, where Caritas, as you have seen, immediately took action to provide assistance. But also the neighboring countries, as I mentioned, they have been supporting tirelessly to welcome the refugees, to doing whatever is possible and sometimes impossible. And Caritas in Europe, through our network, we have been mobilizing to support financially, but also providing other kinds of support, technical support, capacity building, and just trying to be together, trying to stick together, trying to see where we can provide support in the best possible way. So I think that in the midst of the horrors of the war, we have seen a lot of hope and a lot of ray of lights as well. Through Caritas, and of course also through other actors, we are many contributing and doing what we can, but also rays of light through the solidarity that we have seen within the Caritas network. The outpour of solidarity has been just unbelievable. Our fundraising efforts as a network has been unprecedented, but at the same time we know that the needs are huge. So this support will be needed now, and it will be needed for a very long time to come. So we have a mission and we have a work to do to stay on the side of the people in the most vulnerable situations. And that's what we have tried to do throughout. And we will continue to do that because we know that the future holds a lot for us, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of consequences, a lot of elements that we will need to address throughout. We know that there is material damage estimated in Ukraine to some $100 billion, but more importantly still, the human damages, loss of lives, injuries, and also the enormous psychosocial traumas, psychological traumas. And those will last for very long, also after the end of the war. So our response and mobilization as a network will also be long. Because our Ukrainian colleagues and the Caritases in the neighboring countries, they will need our continued mobilization and support, and we will stay here and try to do that coordinated support. We often say that the support to Ukraine and the consequences of the war, it's not a sprint, but it's a marathon. And that's true, and that's how our mindsets need to be, that this is a long way, and we need to stay focused on that. And sometimes our support can still feel, I think, like a drop in the ocean because we see the needs, how huge they are. But we can say that that's a drop that is saving lives, that gives back dignity to the people. And it's many, many, many drops together, just leading into one huge pool of hope. Thank you.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you very much. And now we'll ask Silvia Sinibaldi to take the microphone.
Morning, everyone. I think a lot has been said already that made clear how the Caritas structure is rather an opportunity rather than a challenge. Since the very first day of the war, on the 24th of February, in Caritas Europa Secretariat, but also in other Caritas worldwide, phone calls could not stop to come because of the willingness and of the desire to support of many. And when I say of many, I mean many individuals, but I also mean many private organizations, institutions, and other kind of organizations. This is because the value and the added value of Caritas is how grassrooted we are and how capillary the presence of Caritas is. Especially Caritas in Ukraine, Caritas PES and Caritas Ukraine have been in the country since many years already, and their preparedness and the fact that they were already there and somehow prepared of what could happen, of course, made them stronger, and they were one of the very few, if not only, local organizations that were already there and ready to respond since the very first day. Therefore, we tried, as Caritas Europa Secretariat, to channel and to mainstream all this willingness and desire to support. Altogether, via the emergency appeal system that the director of Caritas Poland just mentioned, we managed to leverage up to now over than 100 million, but this is, as said, still a drop in the ocean. And this, I always say that figures in terms of funding does not give justice to the million of stories that are there, because stories are even more valuable. And in there are stories of hope and also stories of challenges. What are the challenges in the international and humanitarian response now? Of course, the war is still ongoing. And when the war is still ongoing, we are still trying to map what has been going on in terms of response, where the gaps are, and what is the best support and accompaniment that we may want to give to those that are really responding. Especially at the beginning, as you can imagine, the response and the actions were really hectic, and we really had at our heart and our concern the risk in our mind, the risk and the situation of the vulnerabilities of those that were crossing the borders, which kind of risk these people were facing. So it is from the very first day that we set up hotlines, and we tried to make sure that info sharing was there, available to all the Caritases in the countries neighboring with Ukraine, including Poland, so that information could be shared, so that people could be assisted in the best possible way as soon as they were forced to leave their homes. As mentioned already before, our accompaniment is not only an accompaniment that is meant to be a financial support, but it is truly a long-standing support. So as Caritas Europa, and with the support of the Caritas Internationalis Confederation, we set up a coordination mechanism at the beginning that we will reassess here in these days to see in which kind of direction we want to go, what are the gaps there. So we saw in the video that, for example, on cross-border cooperation and transportations, a lot has been implemented in a very fast way. So this is a milestone that we achieved, but together with that, there are a lot of technical support in different areas that can still be leveraged. So this is the value of the network, and the expertise of the people there are there and are available to Caritas in Ukraine and to the countries neighboring with Ukraine, so that we can really make the difference for those that are most in need. Thanks.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to those whom we are looking at with great admiration because of their work, because of their courage. It's my pleasure to give the floor to Tatiana Stawnyczy from Caritas Ukraine.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today. We gathered here in Warsaw for a partner meeting the last days to look at what's been done in these 3 weeks, how we've, 3 months, how we've walked through these 3 months together of this crisis, to take stock of the situation that is now in the country and in the surrounding countries, and also to look to the horizon to see where it is that we're moving forward to. In terms of what's been accomplished or what's been done in Ukraine itself with the help of the entire Caritas network, we have been able to serve over 1 million unique beneficiaries with basic needs as they flee from war-torn areas. We have 36 regional Caritas centers and 97 parish Caritas hubs throughout the country. We have a very wide reach. Together with Caritas Spes, we have one of the largest networks in the country that's providing aid to people in need. In terms of what the situation is now, the core needs have always remained the same. They're basic needs: food, shelter, hygiene, kindness. Things that will help people to restore and recover their human dignity and a sense of life. But as we move forward, there have been changes. Obviously, you've followed the news. There's changes in the dynamic of the situation in the country. There's different regions. There's 3 emerging types of regions right now that we're working in. The first is those areas that are close to the front line, where we're receiving fresh IDPs, people who are fleeing from fighting or from the threat of the contact line coming closer to them, where we're able to provide these very basic needs and that first hug, the first expression of kindness as people come out. We also have newly liberated areas where the basic needs are also there, but then in addition we have needs of restoring and recovering homes, helping people to rebuild and move back into their homes. And then of course we have areas that have moved into a more stabilization period, where the IDPs have started to stay for longer periods of time, and there's need for integration into community, there's need for building opportunities for livelihood, and for deeper psychosocial support, helping people to work through and develop coping mechanisms. In all these things, in my reflections, I often think about what this crisis has done in terms of how it works. And one of the things that I think about is that the crisis reveals what we had placed ahead of time, what we had that we had built before the crisis started. And in that way, I think it's revealed the fabric of our organizations and the fabric of society. It's held together. And together we've been responding to this huge crisis that emerged due to the war. At the same time, the crisis also forms us, and it propels us to create new relationships, to develop new ties, and to respond to those challenges that are in front of us in a new way. And I think that this meeting that we've had today, it's been very Caritas in the last few days. It's been meetings of encountering, of solidarity, of being together. And I believe that by this love and the kindness and this unwavering intention to do good and to help others is what's going to get us through in the future. Thank you.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you very much. And we've got also another voice from Ukraine, Reverend Wiesław Gryniewicz. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I am not a politician and I don't want to be one, but from the beginning of the war, every day we are listening to the news, every one of us does, looking for comfort, looking for news that could make us believe that the war is going to end pretty soon. We've been hearing a lot about keeping one's face recently. We can see this face in Bucha, in Makarovo. We can see it around Kyiv and in many other towns and cities. That's an awful face of disaster, of damage. We also see the faces of people who have been touched by the war. Those faces are destroyed by the fact that they lived through the war. They are also damaged by the wounds of the war. War doesn't choose. It hits everyone, the rich and the poor, those who are near, those who are away. War divides and bears enormous consequences. Not only those we can see on the video films, but also destroys things that cannot be shown that easily. It destroys human dignity, human fate. As Caritas Spes, we are getting to various villages. Some of the villages are located in very specific places, like those next to Chernobyl, where after the explosion, the nuclear explosion of Chernobyl, people had to leave those towns. And now they are not owners, they don't have property. So it's only leased by the state. And now war comes and the buildings are destroyed and people don't have funding to do anything because they were poor already, and now they're even poorer because of the war. And that's where we can see the whole tragedy of the war. The families that were already living in poverty and now they're even more poor. I have seen Vanya, a small boy of 6. He is 6 years old and he's been raised by his grandmother from the very beginning, because the mother came there and left the kid with her parents, so he doesn't know his mother nor his father. And then the war came. Russian soldiers were living in the house. They have taken the whole household for themselves. They have stolen many things, and this poor kid is struggling from the very beginning for his life, for his dignity, and because of war it's even more difficult for the kid. So our mission is not only to heal the wounds, but also the scars that are left on the face of the suffering person. That's not easy, but that's our task, because we as the Caritas family are an organization which is representing the social teaching of the Catholic Church. So this meeting is also an opportunity to thank all those who are next to us, who are close, who are supporting our activity. And that's a very difficult one, because war is also concerning our families, the families of our employees, of ourselves. And we were able to deal in the field of humanitarian aid, in the distribution of food throughout Ukraine. We have also organized shelters for people, long-term shelters where people can get when fleeing the war. We have also started a call center where people can call and ask for specific help. These are just some actions that are made possible thanks to the support of our massive support we are getting. Not only the one expressed by material help, but also for your prayers, for the fact that you are receiving our people here, because you are standing next to us, and together we are healing those wounds and those scars of the war. Thank you very much to all our guests for speaking here, for their presence here. And now time has come for questions. Do you have any questions you would like to ask to our guests? Tomasz Jelenkiewicz, the Polish Radio. English or Polish? Whatever. We've got interpreting. Father Wieczesław, what are the main needs in Ukraine nowadays? Did they change in the context of the changes on the front line? Because we know that the front line is now in the east. And I've got also a question to Maria. The help of all the Caritases, the whole network within Caritas International, what is the size of it? Because the Polish journalists know how the Polish Caritas is helping, but we don't know what is the help of other countries like. Can we ask you to sum up the situation? What are your plans for the future also? Thank you for the question. Well, I can just give you some statistics. The city of Dnipro, 5,000 people registered there to receive help in our center. Winnica, 1,500, 1,700 people coming there once per week, queuing to get humanitarian aid. Kharkiv, 3,000 people, more or less. The call center we have launched, it's more or less 1,500 calls every day, and we've got only 2 people there. So we blocked the operator. We had to change something because people were calling to get help. There are questions about food, about means of hygiene, and many thanks also, but also questions about places where they can go, where they can stay. So help is the same during this active phase of the war. People want to eat, people want to get help, want to get information.
So, as the network, we have been launching. As a network, we have for the emergency appeal for Ukraine only 100 million euros. So, and that's just the emergency appeal. Then we have, for all of the neighboring countries, they have equally launched the emergency appeals. So, and those are being supported by the Confederation, those are being fully financed. But it's also really important to say that every country across Europe, every Caritas, has been launching individual campaigns on top of this. And we don't have the full overview of how much this will lead to, and these fundraising efforts are ongoing, and they will be continued. We know that the needs will continue, so we will continue to raise. But we also have international support. So I was mentioning the Caritas across Europe. These days, we have had representatives here from Korea, from Australia, so there's really international support pouring in. From the US, very importantly as well. So the, you know, as I said, the support has been unprecedented, and we will just see that this is continued. So it's very difficult to have the full overview, because this is not an emergency like the ones that we are used to, where there would be in Europe. There could be an earthquake, there could be floodings, where you have the emergency, and then you are assessing, and you can see what are the needs, what is the financial needs. Here we are in the midst of an emergency which is ongoing, and we have only seen parts of the consequences to that yet.
Czy są jeszcze jakieś pytania?
Do you have any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Magdalena Gronek, the Polish press agency. From which countries, apart from Poland, Caritas offered the biggest support? Is it financial support? Is it support in kind? Where is it all going as well?
Make a chart about who has been giving more, because as said, unprecedented efforts have come from all over, at least from all over Europe, if we think about countries neighboring with Ukraine, but also beyond that, so more from Western Europe. The fact is that they were really struggling to support in any possible way, in-kind donation, financial support. In the very first weeks, it was very difficult to channel in-kind donations, because there was such a generosity, such a spontaneous solidarity that had to come out, and it was difficult to channel it, to say, okay, so where do we collect these kind of goods? So a lot of the work around that was about really trying to make a rationale of the needs that were there. So as was mentioned, food, non-food item, hygiene items, but where to stock these all, how to make sure that the transportation would be feasible where most needed. I mean, maybe I'm not answering punctually, but what I really want to highlight is that the generosity and the solidarity came from wherever, and we could really experience that. We received phone calls from Portugal, from Italy, from Germany, from France, and everybody was really asking, how can we support? In-kind, financial, but also volunteering. We did not mention volunteering until now. There are thousands of people that have made themselves available either for a day or for a week, but they really had this push to support also in terms of volunteering. And I think that this is really the added value of this kind of response that is coming, because we are really trying to organize it in the best possible way, but it is also important that we give space for the generosity and for the individual, generosity of people as well.
Ja myślę, że jeszcze na takie podsumowanie to przyjdzie dopiero.
Well, I think the time will only come later for recapitulations because the first months were pretty spontaneous. We had the depots in Leżajsk and Lublin, and shipments from all over Europe were flowing there, from Spain, from Portugal, even from Malta and the UK. We are slowly starting to count it all, and I believe after summer holidays we'll know more. Because just like Sylvia mentioned, we had an emergency response immediately from all over Europe. So you have to give us some time to count it all. Well, of course, volunteering is something hardly measurable. You cannot put it in tables, but we'll try and measure it in a way in the months to come. Yeah, if I might, we got the biggest assistance thanks to our partners, Families to Families and Caritas International. But we also get lots of food support. Sometimes I go to centers and I see the multitude of assistance. So it's hard to make sense of it all because it's flowing from so many directions. Well, apart from food aid, there's language support, for instance. It's really a vast space, and it's very hard to calculate it all. But we are giving it a try still, and I think there will be time to meet up, recapitulate on it all, and thank all the donors. Thank you very much. Any other questions? If there are no more questions, thank you very much indeed for coming to this press conference. Now you can have individual interviews with our guests. These are your persons. We also have Małgorzata Jarosz-Jarczewska, the Deputy Director of Caritas Poland, and she can also give you some information or interviews on emergency appeal in Poland if Father Director is busy elsewhere. So thank you very much for coming, and you can expect your